Hello, wonderful listeners, and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, please consider subscribing for more relaxing stories like this one. We'd love to know where you're tuning in from, so drop a comment below and let us know your location. Now settle in, get comfortable, and let's begin our journey into the empty home, a dog's fight to endure. Max, a golden retriever with eyes the color of warm honey and a tail that rarely stopped wagging, lived a life of uncomplicated joy. His days were a symphony of familiar sounds, the clatter of breakfast bowls, the jingle of keys signaling a walk, the comforting murmur of his humans' voices. The house, a sprawling Victorian nestled amongst ancient oak trees, was his kingdom and he its beloved furry monarch. Every morning, the scent of freshly brewed coffee would rouse him from his plush dog bed, and he'd pad into the kitchen, nudging a cold nose into his owner's hand, a silent plea for affection and, of course, a treat. Sarah, his human, would always oblige, her laughter a bright, melodious sound that filled the grand, high-ceilinged rooms. Max loved Sarah most of all. She was his confidant, his playmate, the soft hand that scratched behind his ears just right. Her husband, Mark, was a steady presence, always ready with a firm pat and a hearty, "Good boy, Max." But it was Sarah's gentle touch and soft-spoken words that truly anchored Max's world. The house itself was a tapestry of scents and sensations. The sun-drenched living room with its worn leather sofa, perfect for afternoon naps. The cool, dark pantry, a treasure trove of forgotten crumbs and intriguing smells. The vast, manicured garden, a boundless playground for chasing squirrels and digging delightful forbidden holes. Life was predictable, safe, and utterly fulfilling. Then, one Tuesday, the symphony faltered. The morning started as usual. Max had his breakfast, enjoyed his morning walk, and settled down for a nap in a sunbeam. He heard the usual flurry of activity, suitcases being dragged, hushed conversations, the familiar scent of travel. Sarah and Mark were going on a trip, a short one, they'd said, like they often did. They'd left him with plenty of food, fresh water, and the comforting presence of Mrs. Henderson, the neighbor, who would visit daily. Max had watched them leave from the living room window, his tail giving a few hopeful thumps as they waved goodbye. He knew the routine. A few days, maybe a week, and they'd be back, full of stories and ready for cuddles. Mrs. Henderson came that evening, a kind woman with a gentle touch. She fed him, let him out, and gave him a good ear scratch. He settled down that night, missing Sarah and Mark, but secure in the knowledge that they would return. The next day, Mrs. Henderson came again, and the day after that. Max's routine continued. A slightly emptier version of his usual life, but still routine. He ate, slept, and waited. But then a subtle shift occurred. The visits from Mrs. Henderson grew less frequent. Her footsteps, once punctual, became sporadic. One day, she didn't come at all. Max waited by the door, his ears perked, listening for the familiar jingle of her keys, the gentle creak of the front door. Silence. He waited longer, his internal clock, usually so precise, growing confused. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, but no Mrs. Henderson. The house, usually bustling with faint sounds from the street or the neighbor's yard, felt strangely muffled. Max nudged his food bowl, half full, a testament to his diminishing appetite. He drank from his water bowl, then wandered through the silent rooms, his paws echoing on the hardwood floors. A new sound began to emerge, not from outside, but from within the house itself, the quiet, persistent hum of absence. Max lay on the cool tiles of the kitchen floor, his head resting on his paws, his eyes fixed on the front door. The silence stretched, long and unbroken. The usual comforting sense of home were still there, but they were fading, becoming ghosts of themselves. The last echoes of Sarah's laughter seemed to vanish into the high ceilings, leaving only an unsettling quiet in their wake. He didn't know it then, but his world, once so vibrant and full, had just begun its slow, painful descent into emptiness. The initial days after Mrs. Henderson's last visit were a blur of confusion and anxious waiting for Max. He kept to his routine, waking at dawn, checking his food bowl, and then settling by the front door, his ears swiveling, straining to catch any sound of an approaching car or footsteps. Every creak of the old house, every rustle of leaves outside, sent a jolt of hopeful anticipation through him, only to be replaced by the heavy thud of disappointment. His internal clock, once so reliable, had now become a tormentor, marking the passage of time without the comfort of familiar milestones. The food in his bowl, once plentiful, began to dwindle. He ate sparingly, his appetite dulled by stress, but also by a primal instinct he didn't yet understand: conservation. He drank from his water bowl, refilling it himself with a splash when the tap was, of course, beyond his capabilities. The water level dropped steadily, a visual countdown to a problem he couldn't comprehend. Max started to explore the house with a new urgency. He nudged doors that were usually closed, whined softly at the bedroom doors, and scratched gently at the threshold of Sarah's study, hoping to conjure her presence. Each room, once a source of comfort, now felt like a vast, echoing cavern. The familiar scent of his humans, once so strong and reassuring, was beginning to fade, replaced by a subtle, growing staleness. He would lie on Sarah's side of the bed, burying his nose in her pillow, inhaling the last vestiges of her perfume, a desperate attempt to hold onto her memory. The silence of the house became a living entity, pressing in on him from all sides. It was no longer just an absence of sound, but an active, suffocating presence that amplified every small noise Max made: the soft click of his claws on the hardwood, the thump of his tail against the sofa, even the quiet rumble of his own stomach. He found himself responding to these sounds, turning his head, ears cocked, as if they were another being sharing the house with him. The outside world, once a lively backdrop, also seemed to quieten. The neighbors' children, whose shouts and laughter usually drifted over the fence, were now unheard. The distant hum of traffic, the occasional bark of another dog, all seemed muted, as if the world beyond the empty home had also decided to hold its breath. Max would spend hours staring out the windows, his nose pressed against the cool glass, watching the seasons slowly turn. The vibrant greens of summer began to soften into the golden hues of autumn. Leaves, once clinging stubbornly to their branches, now drifted lazily to the ground, forming crunchy carpets that Max longed to roll in. But the garden, once his playground, now felt alien and dangerous without a human escort. Max remembered the joy of chasing squirrels through those very leaves, the thrill of digging a fresh hole, the triumphant return to Sarah, tail wagging, a muddy trophy in his mouth. Those memories were now tinged with a deep ache, a longing for a past that seemed to be slipping further and further away. He tried to occupy himself. He chewed on an old tennis ball, but the game felt hollow without someone to throw it. He pushed his favorite squeaky toy across the floor, but its pathetic squeak only highlighted the profound stillness around him. The days bled into weeks. The food bowl was now completely empty, a stark, undeniable truth. The water bowl, too, was dry, a thin film of dust clinging to its bottom. A new, terrifying sensation began to gnaw at Max's insides: hunger. It wasn't the gentle rumbling that preceded a meal, but a sharp, insistent ache that grew with each passing hour. Thirst, a burning dryness in his throat, joined it, an even more immediate and terrifying threat. The house, once a sanctuary, now felt like a grand, gilded cage. The comfortable silence had morphed into a terrifying quiet, and the familiar walls, once protectors, now seemed to loom, indifferent to his plight. Max, who had always known love and abundance, was about to learn a brutal lesson in survival. The gnawing pangs of hunger and the burning ache of thirst became Max's constant companions. His sleek, golden coat, once vibrant, began to lose its luster. His usually bright, intelligent eyes now held a shadow of confusion and a flicker of growing desperation. He roamed the house relentlessly, sniffing every corner, every discarded item, hoping for a forgotten crumb, a spilled drop of water. The scents of his humans, once comforting, now served as cruel reminders of what was lost. He pushed his nose into the empty food bag, inhaling the faint, tantalizing aroma of kibble, a scent that now mocked him. He licked the dry ceramic of his water bowl, his tongue rasping against the dust, yielding nothing but a deeper thirst. The first pang of true despair struck him one afternoon as he lay on the cold kitchen floor, weak and disoriented. He whimpered, a soft, mournful sound that echoed unnaturally in the vast, empty space. He had never truly been alone before. Even when Sarah and Mark were away, there was always Mrs. Henderson or the knowledge that they would return. Now, there was only silence and the cold, unyielding reality of his solitude. He tried to think in his canine way of solutions. He pushed against the back door, scratching at the wood, whimpering louder. He pawed at the windows, leaving dusty nose prints on the glass, but the heavy locks and latches were beyond his understanding. The world outside, a blur of familiar trees, and the occasional distant car, seemed tantalizingly close, yet utterly unreachable. Max explored the pantry again, more thoroughly this time. He knocked over tins, pawed at shelves, his desperation growing. He found a half-eaten bag of stale dog biscuits, left behind from a previous trip. His heart, if a dog's heart could be said to have one in such a moment, leaped with a surge of hope. He tore into the bag, gobbling down the dry, flavorless morsels, each one a tiny victory against the encroaching emptiness. But the relief was fleeting. The biscuits were gone in moments, merely a temporary reprieve, leaving him hungrier and more aware of his predicament. He needed water. The burning in his throat was becoming unbearable. He remembered the bathroom, the shining porcelain bowl where Sarah sometimes let him drink after a long walk. He padded into the master bathroom, his tail, for the first time in weeks, giving a tentative wag. He jumped onto the toilet seat, a trick Sarah had taught him playfully, and peered into the bowl. It was clean, but empty. He tried to paw at the flush handle, mimicking Sarah's actions, but his efforts were futile. No gush of water came. Max slumped down, his small burst of hope extinguished. He lay there for a long time, the cool tiles a small comfort against his feverish body. His mind, usually filled with simple, happy thoughts of walks and playtime, was now consumed by a single overriding instinct: survival. He remembered Sarah telling him about the big rain barrel in the garden, used for watering flowers. He knew he couldn't get out, but the thought spurred him on. He needed to find a way. He wandered into the laundry room, a place he usually avoided because of the noisy washing machine. He sniffed around, his keen nose picking up faint, earthy smells. There was a small utility sink, often left with a few drops of water in it after Mark cleaned his gardening tools. Max jumped up, stretching his neck, his tongue straining to reach. He managed a few desperate licks, just enough to moisten his parched throat, but it was far from enough. The effort left him exhausted. As the days continued to stretch into an unbroken chain of sameness, Max began to lose track of time. Night and day blurred into a continuous cycle of hunger, thirst, and desperate searching. His fur became dull and matted. His ribs began to show through his once plush coat. He moved slower, his steps heavy and deliberate. The happy, carefree Max was slowly fading, replaced by a gaunt, wary creature driven by a single primal need: to endure. He curled up on the cold floor of the grand entrance hall, the moonlight casting long, ghostly shadows around him. The silence of the house was no longer just an absence, but a presence that felt almost oppressive. Max closed his eyes, trying to conjure the image of Sarah's face, her soft hand, the sound of her voice. But even those precious memories were starting to feel distant, like echoes from another lifetime. He was truly alone, and the fight for survival had just begun in earnest. Max's world had shrunk to the confines of the house, a desolate landscape where every shadow seemed to hold a forgotten crumb, every surface a potential source of moisture. His senses, once attuned to the nuances of human interaction, now focused entirely on survival. His nose, a marvel of canine evolution, became his primary tool. He sniffed along baseboards, under furniture, even at the very edges of the old, faded wallpaper, hoping for any trace of sustenance. The house, in its vast emptiness, started revealing its hidden secrets. In the dusty recesses behind the washing machine, he discovered a small, perpetual leak from a forgotten pipe. It was a slow drip, barely enough to form a puddle, but it was water. Max spent hours there, lapping up the minuscule drops, patiently waiting for each one to fall, his tongue a tiny, desperate sponge. It was a meager supply, but it was enough to stave off the immediate threat of dehydration, a small victory in a world of overwhelming losses. This discovery sparked a flicker of something new within Max's ingenuity. If the house could offer water, perhaps it could offer food too. He remembered the occasional spills in the kitchen, the crumbs that fell from the table during dinner. He started systematically patrolling the kitchen, his nose glued to the floor, sniffing every crack and crevice. He found dried-up bits of cereal under the breakfast nook, a petrified pea beneath the stove, and, miraculously, a single, forgotten dog treat that had rolled under the refrigerator. Each find was a monumental triumph, a burst of energy that kept the despair at bay for a little longer. Max also began to notice the subtle changes in the house itself. The air grew colder, the light through the windows weaker. Autumn was deepening its hold, and the grand old house, without the warmth of human presence, was succumbing to the chill. He sought out sunbeams, chasing the fleeting patches of warmth across the floor, savoring their brief comfort. He curled up on the thickest rugs, burrowing into the fabric, trying to conserve his dwindling body heat. The nights became long and bitterly cold. He would shiver uncontrollably, his bones aching with the chill that permeated the very walls. He found an old, discarded blanket in the laundry room, stiff and musty, but it offered a small measure of warmth. He dragged it to his chosen sleeping spot, a sheltered corner behind the sofa in the living room, and burrowed into its folds, finding a semblance of comfort in its rough texture. His once playful dreams were now replaced by restless sleep, punctuated by startling sounds, the creak of settling wood, the whisper of wind through broken panes, the skittering of unseen creatures in the walls. Max was no longer just an abandoned pet. He was becoming a wild thing, his instincts honed by hardship, his senses sharpened by necessity. One particularly bleak morning, as he was making his rounds through the desolate kitchen, a faint green caught his eye. It was a small, barely visible sprout pushing its way up through a crack in the tile near the back door. A forgotten seed, perhaps from a dropped fruit or vegetable, finding life in the most unlikely of places. Max nudged it with his nose, curious. It was a tiny, fragile thing, but it represented something profound, life. It was a stark contrast to the decaying grandeur around him, a defiant splash of green in a world of fading colors. He didn't understand its significance intellectually, but something deep within him resonated with its silent struggle. It was a glimmer of hope, a testament to endurance, a reminder that even in the most desolate of environments, life found a way to persist. He continued to watch the sprout over the following days, a silent observer of its slow, persistent growth. It became a small focal point in his otherwise monotonous existence, a tiny living beacon in the vast, empty home. It gave him a strange, quiet comfort, a shared experience of enduring against the odds. The sprout, a mere fleck of green, unknowingly became a symbol for Max, a silent companion in his lonely fight to endure. He was still hungry, still thirsty, still overwhelmingly alone. But the sight of that tenacious little plant seemed to whisper a message of resilience, a faint, unheard promise that even in the deepest despair, life persisted. Max's routine became a meticulous hunt. Every room, every piece of furniture, every discarded object was scrutinized. He learned to differentiate between the scent of dust and the faint, almost imperceptible aroma of a forgotten crumb. His once playful nature had been entirely subsumed by the primal need to find food. The leaky pipe in the laundry room provided just enough water to keep him alive, but his hunger was a constant, burning companion, a hollow ache that never truly subsided. One afternoon, a new sound pierced the house's persistent silence, a distinct, rapid scratching coming from the pantry. Max's ears perked up, his head cocked. It wasn't the settling of the house. It was something alive. He crept towards the sound, his movements slow and deliberate, a hunter's stealth replacing his usual clumsy exuberance. He peered into the pantry, his eyes adjusting to the dim light. In the corner, near a torn bag of flour, a small gray mouse scurried, nibbling furiously at a dropped grain of rice. Max froze, a primal instinct surging through him, food. His stomach rumbled violently, overriding any sense of fear or hesitation. This was not a game, this was survival. He lunged, a sudden burst of speed from his weakened frame. The mouse, startled, darted away, disappearing into a tiny crack in the baseboard. Max barked, a hoarse, unfamiliar sound, frustrated and angry. He pawed at the crack, whimpering, the scent of the mouse a tantalizing torment. The encounter left him trembling, a mix of adrenaline and disappointment coursing through his veins. He had almost had it, almost had a real meal. The house, he realized, was not entirely empty. He was not alone, but his companions were not the comforting presence of his humans. They were other scavengers, fighting their own battles for survival within the decaying walls. This realization sharpened his senses further. He began to stalk the house, his ears constantly swiveling, listening for the faint sounds of rustling, the tiny squeaks that signaled a potential meal. The mouse became his elusive prey, a phantom of sustenance that occasionally appeared, only to vanish before he could act. He was no longer just waiting. He was actively hunting, adapting to his new reality. One evening, as the last vestiges of twilight faded, Max heard a distinct thumping sound from the attic. It was heavier than a mouse, more deliberate. He made his way to the attic stairs, pushing at the closed door with his nose. It was slightly ajar, a crack of darkness leading upwards. He whined, hesitant but driven by a desperate curiosity. He pushed harder and the door creaked open, revealing a steep, dusty staircase. Max slowly ascended, his claws scraping softly on the wooden steps. The air in the attic was thick with dust and the scent of old wood and forgotten things. He saw it then, perched on an exposed beam, a large, black rat, its beady eyes reflecting the faint light from a distant window. The rat, emboldened by the house's emptiness, had grown plump on the spoils of abandonment. It was significantly larger than the mouse, a more formidable adversary. Max, weakened as he was, knew this was a different kind of challenge. He approached cautiously, a low growl rumbling in his chest. The rat bared its teeth, a surprisingly aggressive display. This was not merely a chase. It was a confrontation. Max lunged, but the rat was quick, disappearing into a gap in the wall. Max snarled, frustration boiling over. He was a golden retriever, a dog bred for companionship and retrieving, not for hunting vermin. Yet here he was, driven by the stark reality of his hunger. The house, once a haven of comfort, had become a brutal arena where every living creature, from the smallest mouse to the largest dog, fought for its very existence. Max returned downstairs, exhausted but resolute. The presence of these other creatures, while posing a new challenge, also served as a strange validation. He wasn't the only one trying to survive here. He was part of a silent, desperate ecosystem that had taken root in the empty home. The battle for scraps had begun, and Max, against all his instincts, was learning to be a warrior. As the days melted into weeks, Max's physical appearance continued its slow, painful transformation. His once lustrous golden fur was now dull, matted, and thin, revealing the sharp angles of his ribs. His movements, once fluid and energetic, were now deliberate, conserving every ounce of his dwindling strength. The constant ache of hunger was a low thrum beneath all his thoughts, punctuated by sharper pangs that stole his breath. Yet in the midst of this physical decay, Max's spirit, though battered, clung stubbornly to life. He still sought out sunbeams, not just for warmth, but for the brief, comforting illusion of normalcy they offered. He still curled up on Sarah's side of the bed, burying his nose in the pillow, though the scent of her was now so faint it was almost a ghost. These small rituals, echoes of his past life, were vital anchors in his sea of solitude. Max found himself revisiting his favorite spots in the house, not in a desperate search for food or water, but in a silent, mournful pilgrimage. He would lie on the worn oriental rug in the living room, where he had spent countless evenings at Sarah's feet. He would stare at the unlit fireplace, remembering the crackling warmth and the gentle murmur of conversation. Each spot held a memory, a fleeting image of a happier time, a sound that played only in his mind. He would often find himself by the grand front window, his nose pressed against the cool glass, gazing out at the world beyond. The street, once bustling with life, now seemed eerily quiet. Cars rarely passed, and the neighbor's house, once a source of faint sounds and occasional laughter, now stood silent and dark. It was as if the entire world had forgotten this house and the lonely dog within it. Max would sometimes see other dogs being walked by their owners, their tails wagging, their steps light and carefree. A profound ache would settle on his chest, a yearning for the simple joy of a leash in a human hand, the freedom of a romp in the park. He would let out a soft whine, a barely audible plea for attention, but the glass was an impenetrable barrier, and his voice too weak to carry. The changing seasons offered their own cruel reminders. The leaves on the oak trees, once a vibrant green, had turned to fiery reds and golds, then gradually withered to a brittle brown before falling to the ground. The wind howled through the gaps in the old house, rattling windows and whistling through cracks, a mournful symphony that mirrored Max's own inner despair. He remembered the crisp autumn walks with Sarah, the crunch of leaves underfoot, the exhilarating chase after a thrown stick. Now, the autumn wind brought only a deeper chill, seeping into his bones and reminding him of the increasingly harsh reality of his existence. One evening, a particularly strong gust of wind slammed against the house, rattling a loose pane in the kitchen window. Max, startled, jumped to his feet, a low growl rumbling in his chest. He approached the window cautiously, his senses on high alert. The pane, though still in place, felt significantly looser. A faint draft of cold, fresh air seeped in, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and distant wood smoke. It was a new smell, a scent of the outside world that was both invigorating and terrifying. He pawed at the window, testing its weakness. He remembered Sarah opening windows for fresh air, the ease with which she manipulated the latches. He tried to mimic her movements, nudging the latch with his nose, then pawing at it with his foreleg. It was futile. The mechanism was too complex, too stiff for his paws. Yet the brief influx of fresh air, the tantalizing glimpse of the outside world, sparked a new idea in his mind. The house was not an entirely sealed tomb. There were weaknesses, vulnerabilities, if only he could find them. The thought, a fragile seed of hope, began to take root in his mind. He was still battling hunger and thirst, still fighting for survival, but now a new objective had emerged: to find a way out, to escape the silent, echoing prison of his empty home. The subtle opening in the kitchen window, though too small for escape, became Max's lifeline to the outside world. He would spend hours there, sniffing the air, letting the faint scents of damp earth, fallen leaves, and distant wood smoke wash over him. His nose, a marvel of sensitivity, began to pick up new, tantalizing aromas: the musky scent of a fox, the faint, sweet smell of a wild apple tree, the earthy aroma of mushrooms growing in the damp undergrowth. These were the scents of the wild, a world both dangerous and full of potential, a world that promised sustenance beyond the barren confines of the house. His hunger, though constant, was now accompanied by a growing restlessness, a yearning for the freedom he once took for granted. He paced the house more, his movements less aimless, more purposeful. He was no longer just a prisoner. He was a scout, mapping his environment, searching for weaknesses, for any potential route to the outside. He knew the layout of the house intimately now, every creak of the floorboards, every shadow cast by the setting sun. He had found every hidden crumb, every drop of water from the leaky pipe. The house had given him all it could, and it was no longer enough. The small green sprout in the kitchen crack continued its slow growth, a silent testament to life's tenacity. Max would often lie beside it, watching it, as if drawing strength from its resilience. It was a mirror of his own fight, a reminder that even in the most desolate places, life found a way. But the sprout was not food, and the leaky pipe was not enough. He needed more. One morning, a bird, small and gray, flew into the gap in the kitchen window. Startled, it fluttered frantically against the glass before finding its way back out. Max watched, a new intensity in his eyes, a bird, a potential meal. He understood with a clarity born of desperation that the world outside held not just freedom, but food. He began to associate the window with opportunity. He tried to widen the gap, pushing his nose into the crack, pawing at the loose pane, but his efforts were futile. The glass was unyielding and the frame too sturdy. Still, the image of the bird, so close, so tantalizing, remained etched in his mind, fueling his resolve. He started exploring the house with a new objective, not just to find sustenance within, but to find a way to break free. He remembered the cellar door, usually locked and rarely used. He had only been down there once or twice with Mark, a dark, damp place filled with forgotten tools and the smell of earth. He nudged the cellar door, which was located in a corner of the kitchen near the back wall. It was a heavy wooden door secured by a simple latch. Max pawed at the latch, mimicking the way he'd seen Mark operate it. His attempts were clumsy but persistent. He pushed, he scratched, he whined. He was weak, but his will was hardening. After what felt like hours, a small, satisfying click echoed in the silent kitchen. The latch had moved, ever so slightly. Max pushed harder with his nose, and the heavy door groaned open a few inches, revealing a dark, musty void and the distinct scent of damp earth, mold, and something else. Something alive. He hesitated. The cellar was dark, an unknown territory, and he was wary. But the desire for escape, the burning need for sustenance, was stronger than his fear. He pushed the door further open with his whole body, revealing a set of steep, wooden steps descending into absolute darkness. Max stood at the threshold, his ears flattened against his head, his tail tucked low. The scents from below were intriguing, a mix of decay and something fresh, something wild. He took a cautious step, then another, his paws feeling for the edge of each step. The darkness enveloped him, but the promise of the unknown, the potential for a way out, pulled him forward. He was venturing into a new realm of his empty home, a realm that might hold the key to his survival or a deeper peril. The fight had taken a new turn, from enduring within to actively seeking a path to freedom. The descent into the cellar was a slow, cautious process. Each step creaked under Max's weight, echoing unnervingly in the profound darkness. The air grew colder, heavier, saturated with the scent of damp earth, mildew, and something else, a faint, musky odor that spoke of unseen creatures. Max's senses were on high alert, his whiskers twitching, his ears swiveling, trying to piece together the unseen landscape around him. He could hear the drip, drip of water, more pronounced than the slow leak in the laundry room, and the soft scuttling of tiny feet in the shadows. His fear was palpable, a cold knot in his stomach, but his hunger and the desperate yearning for a way out propelled him forward. The cellar floor was uneven, a mix of packed earth and broken concrete. Max stumbled occasionally, his weakened legs struggling to maintain balance. He could discern vague shapes in the gloom, old furniture draped in white sheets, boxes stacked high, forgotten tools leaning against the walls. It was a graveyard of the house's past, a repository of things no longer needed, mirroring Max's own discarded existence. He sniffed along the walls, his nose guiding him through the darkness. The drip, drip, drip led him to a corner where a natural spring, or perhaps a burst pipe, had created a small permanent puddle. The water was clear, cold, and tasted of earth, but it was water, an abundant supply compared to the meager drips from the laundry room. Max drank deeply, long, satisfying gulps that eased the burning in his throat and brought a temporary sense of relief. It was a huge victory, a monumental discovery that guaranteed his immediate survival from thirst. But water alone was not enough. His stomach still growled its empty song. He continued to explore, his eyes slowly adjusting to the perpetual twilight of the cellar. He found evidence of other life, gnawed wood, tiny droppings, and faint trails in the dust. The cellar was teeming with mice and perhaps even rats, drawn by the dampness and the forgotten treasures within. This was a hunting ground, a new arena in his fight to endure. He moved with renewed purpose, his senses sharpened by the prospect of food. He stalked the shadows, listening for the telltale rustle, the faint squeak. He was no longer the pampered pet, but a predator, driven by instinct. His first successful hunt in the cellar was for a small, unsuspecting mouse that darted out from behind a stack of old magazines. Max, with a sudden burst of energy, pounced. The kill was swift and brutal, a stark reminder of the harsh realities of his new life. He ate quickly, instinctively, the taste of fresh meat a shocking contrast to the stale crumbs he had been surviving on. It was a meager meal, but it filled a small corner of his empty stomach, providing a surge of vital energy. The cellar, initially a place of fear, was slowly transforming into a place of sustenance. It was still dark, still damp, still filled with the ghosts of the past, but it offered two crucial elements for survival: water and food. Max found a relatively dry, sheltered spot beneath an old workbench, away from the constant drip of water, and curled up. The cold was still present, but the physical relief from hunger and thirst allowed him a deeper, more restorative sleep than he had experienced in weeks. He dreamt of chasing squirrels in the sun-drenched garden, of Sarah's gentle hands, of the warm embrace of his dog bed. But even in his dreams, a new image flickered: the dark, damp cellar, a place of both fear and salvation. He was adapting, changing, evolving. The empty home was molding him into something new, a resilient survivor capable of navigating the darkest corners of his world. His journey was far from over, but he had found a temporary sanctuary, a place where he could at least fight another day. Life in the cellar established a new, grittier routine for Max. His days were now a cycle of hunting, drinking, and exploring. The constant drip of water provided an endless supply, and the mice and rats, though elusive, offered enough sustenance to keep him from starvation. He was thinner, his bones more prominent, but there was a hardened resilience in his eyes, a fierce determination that had replaced the earlier confusion and despair. He learned the cellar's labyrinthine layout, every dark corner, every stack of boxes. He discovered forgotten nooks where the light from small, grimy windows high above filtered in, casting weak, dusty shafts of light. These patches of light became his new sunbeams, places where he would rest, conserving energy, his senses still alert for any movement. The cold was a constant companion, but he found ways to cope. He would burrow into piles of old rags or forgotten blankets, creating crude nests that offered a small measure of warmth. His fur, though still matted, began to thicken slightly, a natural adaptation to the persistent chill. He was becoming more like a wild animal, shedding the comforts of his domesticated past, embracing the harsh realities of his present. One of the biggest challenges in the cellar was the complete lack of human interaction. Max, a social creature by nature, craved touch, a kind voice, a comforting presence. He would sometimes let out a soft whine, a lonely plea into the darkness, but only the echoes of his own voice answered him. He missed Sarah's gentle hand, Mark's firm pats, the familiar sense of their presence. These memories, once a source of comfort, now carried a bitter sweetness, a reminder of a world that felt impossibly far away. He often found himself staring up at the closed cellar door, a symbol of the world above, the world of light and warmth and humans. He would push at it sometimes, a futile gesture, knowing it was too heavy, too securely latched for him to open from below. The knowledge that a mere wooden barrier separated him from the rest of the house, and potentially a way out, was a constant torment. Despite the harshness, there were small moments of unexpected beauty. The way a single shaft of light would illuminate dancing dust motes, turning them into tiny ethereal stars. The quiet, persistent drip of water, a soothing rhythm in the overwhelming silence. The resilience of the small green sprout upstairs, which he would check on during his brief forays out of the cellar, still growing, still pushing towards the light. These moments, brief and fleeting, were enough to prevent his spirit from completely breaking. He was no longer just a passive victim. He was an active participant in his own survival. He was learning, adapting, enduring. The cellar, initially a place of fear, had become his school, teaching him lessons in resilience, resourcefulness, and the raw, unvarnished truth of existence. Max had learned to appreciate the smallest victories: a successful hunt, a long drink of cool water, a fleeting patch of sunlight. He was no longer just waiting for his humans to return. He was fighting to stay alive, to be their asterisk if asterisk they ever did. His golden retriever spirit, though tempered by hardship, still held a spark of its former warmth, a deep-seated loyalty that refused to be extinguished. He was a sentinel in the darkness, a lonely warrior in his empty home, forever searching for a path back to the light, forever enduring. Autumn's gentle chill had deepened into the biting cold of early winter. Max could feel the change even within the cellar's relatively stable temperature. The air grew crisper, and the occasional gust of wind that whistled through unseen cracks in the foundation carried with it the sharp, clean scent of frost. His fur, though thicker, felt inadequate against the persistent cold, and he spent more time curled tightly in his makeshift nests of rags, conserving precious body heat. His forays upstairs became less frequent, driven only by the occasional hope of finding something new or the need to check on the green sprout, which, remarkably, still clung to life, though its growth had slowed. The upstairs rooms were colder now, the air heavy with a stale, icy stillness. The large windows, once sources of light, now seemed to radiate cold, and the views of the garden showed a starker landscape. The oak trees were bare, their branches skeletal against the gray sky. The vibrant hues of autumn had been replaced by a monochrome palette of browns, grays, and the occasional dusting of white. Max remembered the joy of playing in the snow with Sarah and Mark, chasing flung snowballs, burying his nose in the soft, powdery drifts. Those memories were now a bittersweet ache, a stark contrast to the desolate reality of his present. One morning, a thin layer of frost coated the inside of the kitchen windows, a testament to the plummeting temperatures outside. Max nudged it with his nose, the cold sensation a jarring reminder of the world beyond his reach. The leaky pipe in the laundry room, his initial source of water, had frozen solid, a cruel twist of fate. This forced him to rely solely on the cellar's perpetual puddle, a source he was now grateful for. The mouse and rat population in the cellar, too, seemed to dwindle as the cold intensified, making his hunts more challenging and less frequent. His energy levels dropped further, and he moved with a slow, deliberate caution, every step a conscious effort. He would sometimes sit for long stretches, simply staring into the darkness, his mind a blank canvas, his body a vessel of endurance. The silence of the house intensified with the cold. There were fewer creaks, fewer whispers of wind. It was a deep, profound stillness that seemed to swallow all sound, leaving Max truly alone with his thoughts and the rhythmic thump of his own weary heart. He found comfort in the routine, however harsh. The familiar path to the water puddle, the known hiding spots of his prey, the sheltered corner beneath the workbench, these were the constants in his ever-changing, ever-challenging world. He was no longer searching for his past. He was entirely focused on his present, on the minute-by-minute struggle to survive. His senses, honed by months of solitude, became even sharper. He could hear the faint scuttling of a spider, the soft settling of dust, the almost imperceptible shifts in temperature. He was living entirely in the moment, every instinct tuned to the subtle cues of his environment. The empty home was no longer just a prison. It was his world, and he, its resilient, lonely inhabitant. Max, the golden retriever, had become a creature of pure endurance, his spirit forged in the crucible of abandonment, his will to live burning fiercely even in the face of overwhelming odds. He was a testament to the unbreakable spirit of life, a silent sentinel in the heart of a decaying mansion, waiting for a future he could only dimly imagine, and fighting for every single breath. The relentless grip of winter tightened its hold on the empty home. Days bled into weeks, marked only by the increasing cold and Max's deepening exhaustion. His frame was gaunt, his once fluffy tail now thin and barely capable of a wag. He conserved every calorie, every movement, his life reduced to the most basic functions of survival. The cellar, though a sanctuary, was not immune to the pervasive chill. The water puddle, his most precious resource, sometimes developed a thin skin of ice, forcing him to break it with his nose before he could drink. The mice and rats, too, were harder to find, driven deeper into hiding by the cold. Max's hunts became longer, more arduous, often yielding only the smallest of creatures, barely enough to sustain him. He was losing weight steadily, his energy waning. One frigid afternoon, a sound, faint and almost imperceptible, reached Max's ears. It wasn't the creak of the house, nor the whisper of the wind, nor the scuttling of unseen creatures. It was a human sound, a distant, muffled thud, followed by a faint clatter. Max, who had grown accustomed to the profound silence, stiffened. His ears perked, his head cocked, his body tense with a mixture of fear and a desperate, fragile hope. He hadn't heard a human sound besides the occasional distant car and what felt like an eternity. He pushed himself to his feet, his muscles protesting, and made his way slowly up the cellar stairs. The kitchen above was even colder than the cellar, and the light filtering through the grimy windows was weak and gray. He listened intently. The sounds were coming from the living room, a series of bumps and scrapes, followed by a muffled voice. Max's heart, which had slowed to a survival rhythm, now beat with a frantic, insistent rhythm. Could it be? Could Sarah and Mark have returned? He crept towards the living room, his steps soft and hesitant. He peered around the door frame, his breath catching in his throat. What he saw was not Sarah or Mark. Two figures, bundled in thick coats and hats, were moving through the living room, their faces obscured by shadows and the sheer unfamiliarity of their presence. They were not his humans. Disappointment, sharp and bitter, pierced through the fragile hope that had blossomed in his chest. His tail, which had given a small, tentative thump, now drooped. These were strangers. They were moving furniture, covering it with white sheets, their voices low and businesslike. They looked like movers, or perhaps people preparing the house for sale. Max slunk back into the shadows, his body trembling. He was terrified. He had become a creature of the shadows, a ghost in his own home. He remembered the kindness of human hands, the warmth of their presence, but these strangers, with their heavy boots and their purposeful movements, felt alien and threatening. He stayed hidden, watching them from a safe distance, his eyes narrowed, his body coiled. He observed their movements, their patterns. They spoke in short bursts, their voices devoid of the warmth he remembered. They were methodical, efficient, and completely oblivious to his presence. The thought of being discovered filled him with a primal fear. He was no longer the beloved pet. He was a wild thing, a trespasser in what was once his sanctuary. He knew instinctively that if they found him, his fragile existence in the empty home would be irrevocably altered, and not for the better. He retreated silently, back down into the comforting darkness of the cellar, the only place where he felt truly safe. The glimmer of hope had been extinguished, replaced by a renewed sense of fear and the harsh realization that the outside world, when it did intrude, was not necessarily a benevolent one. The empty home was still his prison, but now it also felt like his hiding place, his last refuge against a world that had forgotten him. The presence of the strangers in the house was a constant source of anxiety for Max. He kept to the cellar, venturing upstairs only when he was certain they were gone, usually late at night or during the brief, frigid hours of dawn. His senses were on high alert, every creak, every distant murmur sending a jolt of fear through him. He had become a master of stealth, moving silently through the house, a shadow amongst shadows. The strangers, as he observed, were methodical. They were removing items, packing boxes, and covering furniture. The house, which had once felt merely empty, now felt like it was being systematically dismantled, piece by piece. The familiar scents of his home were slowly being replaced by the sterile smell of cardboard and packing tape. Max would sneak into the living room, sniffing at the covered furniture, trying to find the lingering scent of Sarah or Mark, but even those faint traces were fading, being replaced by the impersonal odor of the white sheets draped over everything. It was as if his past life was being erased, systematically wiped away by these intruders. One evening, as Max cautiously explored the kitchen, he overheard the strangers talking. Their voices were clearer this time, carrying from the dining room where they were packing up delicate china. He couldn't understand their words, of course, but the tone, low and businesslike, conveyed a sense of finality. He heard the occasional clink of glass, the rustle of paper, and the sharp tearing sound of tape. It was the sound of an ending, though Max didn't fully grasp its meaning. He only knew that his world was shrinking, becoming even more precarious. A particularly cold night brought with it the first heavy snowfall of winter. Max, peering through a cellar window that offered a glimpse of the garden, watched the flakes drift silently down, covering the desolate landscape in a pristine blanket of white. It was beautiful, but also terrifying. He knew the snow would make finding food even harder if he ever managed to get outside. It also meant a deeper, more profound cold. The house, already icy, would become a freezer. The cellar, though offering some protection, felt increasingly isolated. Max also noticed that the strangers were not leaving any discarded food. They brought their own lunches, carefully packed, and took away all their waste. This meant there were no crumbs, no forgotten scraps for him to find. His already meager diet was further threatened. He had to rely almost entirely on the diminishing population of mice and rats in the cellar, a struggle that was becoming increasingly desperate. The constant fear of discovery, coupled with the relentless hunger and cold, began to take a toll on Max's already weakened body. He was losing weight at an alarming rate, his movements slower, his energy reserves almost entirely depleted. He would often lie in his nest, shivering, his mind drifting in and out of consciousness, haunted by dreams of warmth and food. He knew with a primal certainty that he couldn't last much longer without a significant change. One afternoon, while the strangers were busy in the upstairs bedrooms, Max ventured into the main hall. He heard a faint scratching sound coming from the base of the grand staircase. He approached cautiously, his hackles raised. It was a large gray squirrel, somehow having found its way into the house through an open vent or a broken pane. It was frantically trying to gnaw its way out through a small hole in the wall. Max's hunting instinct surged. This was a substantial meal, a chance at real sustenance. He lunged, but the squirrel, quicker and more agile, darted up the staircase, disappearing into the shadows of the upper landing. Max barked, a raw, desperate sound that echoed through the silent house. The sound was immediately followed by a sharp, surprised shout from one of the strangers upstairs. Max froze. He had been discovered. Panic seized him. He turned and bolted, scrambling back towards the safety of the cellar, his heart pounding, the shouts of the strangers echoing behind him. His brief encounter with potential food had turned into a terrifying brush with discovery, further cementing his fear of the human world outside his dark sanctuary. The shouts of the strangers resonated in Max's ears as he scrambled down the cellar stairs, his heart hammering against his ribs. He dove into the deepest, darkest corner beneath the workbench, trembling violently. He could hear their heavy footsteps above, the muffled voices growing closer, then moving away, searching. He held his breath, pressing himself against the cold concrete, trying to make himself as small and invisible as possible. The fear of discovery was overwhelming, a primal terror that eclipsed even his constant hunger. He lay there for what felt like an eternity, listening to the sounds of their search. He heard them enter the kitchen, their footsteps heavy on the wooden floor. He heard one of them call out, a sharp, questioning tone, and the other reply, a dismissive shrug in their voice. Max, in his acute state of fear, understood that they were looking for him. He could almost feel their eyes searching, their presence looming above him. Eventually, the footsteps retreated and the voices faded. The cellar door creaked shut, plunging him back into profound darkness, but also into a fragile sense of safety. He didn't emerge from his hiding spot for hours, not until the house above was completely silent, and he was certain the strangers had left for the day. The encounter had left him shaken, exhausted, and even more wary of the human world. He was no longer just hiding from the elements. He was hiding from people, from the very beings who had once been his source of comfort and security. The experience, however, also solidified a new resolve within him. He couldn't stay hidden in the cellar forever. The house was being cleared, emptied, and soon there would be nowhere left for him to hide. He needed to find a way out, a true escape. His life now depended not just on surviving within the empty home, but on breaking free from it. He resumed his exploration of the cellar, but with a renewed sense of urgency. He sniffed along the stone foundation walls, searching for any weakness, any crack, any opening that might lead outside. He remembered stories Sarah used to tell him about dogs who dug their way out of fences, their paws tirelessly scratching at the earth. Max had never needed to dig before, but now the instinct was stirring within him. He found a section of the stone wall where the mortar had crumbled, creating a small, loose pile of dirt and debris. It was a tiny crack, barely wide enough for his nose, but he could feel a faint draft of cold, fresh air seeping through. It was the scent of the outside, raw and untamed, but also promising. He began to scratch, tentatively at first, then with increasing determination. His claws, once soft from regular walks on paved paths, were now hardened by weeks of navigating rough surfaces. He dug, pushing aside loose stones and chunks of earth, his body aching, his breath coming in ragged gasps. It was slow, laborious work, but each small piece of dislodged debris was a victory. He worked in short bursts, resting when exhaustion threatened to overwhelm him, then returning to his task with renewed resolve. He was driven by a single, overriding image: the open sky, the scent of the wild, the promise of freedom. The hole grew slowly, painstakingly. It was still far too small for him to squeeze through, but he could feel the outside air more strongly now, carrying with it the faint, exhilarating scent of pine needles and damp earth. He was making progress, however slow. He was fighting back, actively carving his own path to survival. The empty home had once been his sanctuary, then his prison, and now it was a battleground where he fought not just to endure, but to escape. His fight was solitary, desperate, but infused with a raw, primal will to live that refused to be extinguished. Days blurred into a relentless cycle of digging, hunting, and conserving energy. Max's paws were raw and sore, his claws chipped and worn, but he continued his arduous work on the cellar wall. The hole, once a mere crack, had slowly widened, becoming a narrow tunnel, still too small for his body, but a tangible path towards freedom. Each loosened stone, each handful of dislodged earth, was a testament to his unwavering will. His body was a testament to his suffering. He was skeletal, his golden fur hanging loosely on his frame, his eyes sunken and weary. Yet a fierce light burned within them, a defiance that refused to be extinguished. He was driven by an instinct far older than his domesticated past, a primal urge to survive at all costs. The cold deepened, penetrating even the cellar's thick stone walls. A harsh wind howled above ground, rattling the old house and sending shivers through Max's emaciated body. He knew he was running out of time. His strength was failing, and the winter's grip was tightening. The thought of being trapped in the freezing house, unable to escape, spurred him on, even when his muscles screamed in protest. One morning, as he dug, a new sound reached his ears, a faint, persistent scratching from the other side of the wall. Max froze, his head cocked. It wasn't the sound of a mouse or a rat. It was a rhythmic, deliberate scratching similar to his own, but different. He barked, a weak, hoarse sound, then whined, a desperate plea into the darkness. The scratching stopped. Silence. Max whimpered again, a deep, mournful sound, hoping to elicit a response. After a tense moment, the scratching resumed, closer this time, and then a small, dark nose poked through a newly formed crack in the wall, directly opposite his own tunnel. It was a fox, its eyes bright and wary, its fur thick and reddish-brown. Max stared, mesmerized. The fox, equally surprised, pulled back, its nose twitching, assessing the strange golden creature on the other side. Max whined again, a soft, almost pleading sound. He was not a threat. He was a fellow survivor. The fox, after a moment of hesitation, pushed its nose through again, then its keen eyes, observing Max with an intelligent, cautious gaze. It was a wild creature, wary of humans and their domesticated counterparts, but it seemed to sense Max's desperation, his shared struggle. It was a moment of profound connection, two creatures from different worlds, united by the harsh realities of survival. The fox began to scratch at its side of the wall again, seemingly aiding Max in his efforts. It was as if it understood, instinctively, that a larger opening would benefit them both. Max, emboldened by this unexpected alliance, redoubled his own efforts, digging with a renewed vigor he hadn't thought he possessed. The presence of another living being, even a wild one, was a strange comfort, a shared burden that made his solitary fight feel less overwhelming. He worked tirelessly, side by side with his unseen companion, the rhythmic scratching from the other side a constant encouragement. The hole, slowly but surely, began to widen, the small gap between them growing larger. Max could now see the fox's entire head, its intelligent eyes meeting his, a silent acknowledgement of their shared purpose. The tunnel of hope was slowly taking shape, a testament to the unexpected bonds forged in the crucible of desperation, a path to freedom carved by the shared will to endure. The rhythmic scratching from the other side of the wall became Max's lifeline, a constant pulse of shared effort in the crushing silence of the empty home. The fox, a sleek creature of the wild, continued to assist, its sharp claws and powerful digging instincts making quick work of the loose earth and crumbling mortar. Max, though physically weaker, matched its pace with a sheer force of will, his own raw paws tearing at the stubborn soil. The tunnel was expanding, slowly but surely, inch by painful inch. Max could now see the fox's entire head and shoulders through the growing gap. They exchanged silent glances, a profound understanding passing between them. There was no fear, no aggression, only a shared purpose, escape. The fox, a vixen with intelligent, amber eyes, would occasionally pause, sniff the air, and then resume her digging, a silent signal for Max to continue. This unexpected partnership filled Max with a strange, almost forgotten sense of camaraderie. He was no longer entirely alone. This wild creature, a natural predator, had become his unexpected ally, a beacon of hope in his darkest hour. Their combined efforts had created a passage large enough for Max to push his head and shoulders through. He could feel the cold, fresh air of the outside world on his fur, smell the crisp scent of pine and damp earth, stronger than ever before. He could hear the faint rustle of dry leaves under a thin layer of snow, the distant caw of a crow, the sounds of a world beyond his prison. The urge to break free was overwhelming. He pushed harder, his emaciated body straining against the confines of the tunnel. His ribs scraped against the rough edges of the stone, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The vixen, sensing his struggle, pushed from her side, widening the opening just enough. With a final, desperate surge of strength, Max squeezed through, his body aching, his fur catching on the jagged edges of the wall. He tumbled out onto the cold, snow-dusted ground, his legs barely holding him up. He was outside. The world was cold, stark, and utterly silent save for the whispers of the wind. He looked back at the hole. The vixen emerged a moment later, her eyes meeting his before she vanished silently into the deepening twilight, a fleeting, wild spirit returning to her domain. Max stood there, shivering, his body numb from the cold and the exhaustion, but his spirit soaring with a fragile, triumphant joy. He was free, but freedom in the depths of winter brought its own set of brutal challenges. The ground was covered in a thin, icy layer of snow, making every step treacherous. The air was bitingly cold, and the wind, unimpeded by walls, cut through his thin fur like a knife. He was out, but he was still utterly alone, and now exposed to the full, unforgiving might of winter. He took a few hesitant steps, his paws sinking slightly into the snow. He sniffed the air, his nose instinctively searching for new scents, new possibilities. He was in the vast, overgrown garden of his old home, a place he once knew as a playground, now a desolate, frozen wilderness. He could see the familiar outlines of the oak trees, their branches laden with snow, and the distant, dark silhouette of the house, his former prison, now behind him. He was weak, hungry, and dangerously cold, but he was free. The fight for survival had moved from the confines of the empty home to the vast, unforgiving expanse of the winter world. Max knew his journey was far from over. This was not the end, but a new, even more challenging beginning. He had escaped, but now he had to endure the raw, brutal reality of the wild. His golden heart, though weary, still pulsed with an indomitable will to live. The first taste of true freedom was exhilarating, but short-lived. The biting wind immediately reminded Max of the brutal realities of the world outside the cellar. The air was sharper, colder, and the faint layer of snow beneath his paws felt like needles. He was out, but now he faced the vast, unforgiving expanse of winter, a landscape that offered little comfort and immense peril. His body, already emaciated and weakened by months of starvation, shivered uncontrollably. He knew, with a primal instinct, that warmth and shelter were paramount. He wandered aimlessly through the overgrown garden, his paws sinking into the thin snow, his eyes scanning for any sign of refuge. The familiar rose bushes were now brittle skeletal structures, their thorns sharp and menacing. The once lush lawn was a frozen expanse, offering no hidden crumbs, no forgotten treasures. The world was stark, beautiful in its desolation, but utterly hostile to a creature as vulnerable as he. Max found a small, sheltered alcove beneath a thick evergreen bush, its dense needles offering a meager barrier against the wind. He curled up, trying to make himself as small as possible, burying his nose in his tail, attempting to conserve what little body heat he had left. The cold seeped into his bones, a deep, pervasive chill that threatened to lull him into a sleep from which he might not awaken. His hunger, which had become a constant companion, now gnawed at him with renewed ferocity. The cellar, for all its darkness and dampness, had at least provided a consistent, albeit meager, supply of mice and rats. Out here, the ground was frozen, and any potential prey was hidden deep beneath the snow or in hibernation. He sniffed the air, his nose picking up faint, tantalizing scents, the lingering aroma of berries on a frozen bush, the earthy smell of a distant burrow. But these were fleeting promises, unreachable in his weakened state. He tried to paw at the frozen ground, hoping to uncover something, anything, but the earth was unyielding. His paws, raw from digging, ached with the cold. He was a golden retriever, a creature of comfort and companionship, not a hardened survivor of the wild. Yet the will to live, forged in the empty home, still flickered fiercely within him. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of icy pink and purple, the temperature plummeted further. Max watched, his eyes heavy-lidded, as the first stars pricked through the darkening sky. He thought of Sarah, of the warmth of her lap, the softness of his bed. These memories, once bittersweet, now felt like a cruel torment, a reminder of a life that was impossibly far away. He was truly alone in the vast, cold world. The night stretched before him, a terrifying expanse of cold and darkness. He knew he had to find food, or he wouldn't survive another day. The freedom he had fought so hard for now felt like an even greater prison, a vast open-air cell where the elements were his merciless jailers. Max shivered, a deep, uncontrollable tremor that racked his entire body. He was at his limit, his endurance stretched to its absolute breaking point. The empty home had prepared him for survival, but it had not prepared him for the raw, brutal indifference of the winter wilderness. His fight was far from over, and it was about to become even more desperate. The night was a relentless assault of cold. Max huddled beneath the evergreen bush, his body shivering uncontrollably, every muscle aching, every bone protesting. He drifted in and out of a restless sleep, haunted by feverish dreams of warmth, food, and Sarah's gentle touch. His breath plumed in the frigid air, each exhalation a visible reminder of the life slowly ebbing from his body. He was dangerously close to succumbing to the cold, his will to live battling against the overwhelming forces of nature. As dawn approached, painting the eastern sky with faint, ghostly hues, Max felt a growing sense of despair. He had survived the empty home, but was he to perish out here, in the vast, indifferent wilderness? He tried to push himself to his feet, but his legs trembled, his strength almost entirely gone. He collapsed back into the snow, a profound weariness washing over him. Just as he felt the last vestiges of his consciousness begin to fade, a faint metallic scent reached his nose. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but distinct. The smell of something manufactured, something human-made, carrying with it a faint, almost forgotten whisper of warmth. It was a scent that didn't belong to the wild, a scent that stirred a fragile flicker of hope within his dying embers of strength. He lifted his head, his eyes scanning the bleak landscape. The scent seemed to be coming from the direction of the old, broken-down shed at the very edge of the property, a structure he had always avoided due to its dilapidated state. He remembered Mark occasionally storing gardening tools there, but it had mostly been neglected, a forgotten corner of the estate. With a surge of desperate energy, Max pushed himself up. Every step was an agonizing effort, his legs feeling like lead, his body screaming in protest. He stumbled through the thin layer of snow, his eyes fixed on the distant, dark outline of the shed. The metallic scent grew stronger with each painful step, pulling him forward, a desperate beacon in the frozen wilderness. He reached the shed, its wooden walls leaning precariously, its roof partially collapsed. He nudged the door, which was hanging by a single rusty hinge. It groaned open, revealing a dark, cramped interior filled with a scent of old wood, dust, and warmth. A faint, almost imperceptible warmth. Max stumbled inside, his eyes adjusting to the gloom. The shed was mostly empty, save for a few rusted tools and a small, overturned wooden crate. But in one corner, nestled amongst some dry leaves and old straw, was a small, smoldering pile of embers left behind from a long-forgotten fire. It was tiny, barely glowing, but it was enough. Enough to radiate a faint, blessed warmth that promised a reprieve from the biting cold. Max collapsed next to the embers, burying his nose in the warmth, inhaling the faint, smoky scent. He curled up tightly, pressing his emaciated body against the source of heat, letting the blessed warmth seep into his frozen limbs. The shivering slowly subsided, replaced by a deep, profound sense of relief. He was safe for now. He was warm. He was still desperately hungry, but the immediate threat of freezing to death had been averted. As he lay there, his body slowly thawing, he noticed something else. Nestled in the corner of the shed, behind the overturned crate, was a small, partially open bag of birdseed, forgotten and half-eaten. It was not a meal, but it was sustenance. Max, with a renewed flicker of life in his eyes, nudged the bag with his nose. The fight was still ongoing, but he had found a temporary sanctuary, a whisper of warmth and a promise of meager sustenance in the heart of the desolate winter. The empty home had taught him to endure, and the wilderness was teaching him to find hope in the smallest, most unexpected places. The shed became Max's new sanctuary, a fragile haven against the unforgiving winter. He rationed the birdseed, eating only enough to keep the worst pangs of hunger at bay, knowing that his survival depended on making it last. The smoldering embers, carefully tended by some long-forgotten hand, eventually faded, but the shed, with its collapsed roof and gaps in the walls, still offered significantly more protection from the wind and snow than the open garden. Max spent his days huddled in the corner, conserving energy, occasionally venturing out to search for anything edible, though the frozen landscape yielded little. He was weaker than ever, his movements slow and deliberate, his spirit wavering on the brink of exhaustion. The days seemed to blur into a continuous struggle against the cold and hunger, each moment a testament to his sheer will to live. He could hear the sounds of the outside world more clearly now, the occasional distant rumble of a plow clearing snow from the main road, the faint caw of a crow, the whisper of the wind through the bare branches. These sounds, once distant and ignored, now filled him with a yearning, a desperate hope for contact, for rescue. He was a social creature, and the prolonged solitude was taking a profound toll. One afternoon, a distant hum grew louder, closer. It was the distinct sound of a vehicle, not a car on the main road, but something moving slowly, deliberately towards the house. Max's ears perked up, a flicker of frantic hope igniting in his weary eyes. He crawled to the gaping hole in the shed's wall, peering out into the snowy landscape. A large, dark truck, laden with what looked like more furniture and boxes, was slowly making its way up the driveway towards the empty home. The strangers were back. Max's initial instinct was to hide, to retreat into the deepest shadows of the shed, but a new, desperate thought pushed through his fear. This might be his last chance. If they were back to clear out the last remnants of the house, he might never have another opportunity. He had to be seen. He had to make himself known. With a strength he didn't know he possessed, Max pushed himself out of the shed. His legs trembled, his body swayed, but he forced himself to move, stumbling through the snow towards the approaching truck. He barked, a weak, hoarse sound, but it was a bark, a desperate plea for attention. The truck was still some distance away, its engine rumbling loudly, its occupants probably oblivious to the emaciated golden form struggling in the snow. Max barked again, louder this time, putting every ounce of his remaining energy into the sound. He staggered a few more steps, then collapsed in the snow, too weak to continue, but still trying to lift his head, to make eye contact, to be seen. He lay there, his breath coming in ragged gasps, watching the truck approach. His heart pounded with a mix of terror and desperate hope. Would they see him? Would they help? Or would they simply drive past, leaving him to succumb to the cold and the hunger? His life hung in the balance, a fragile thread stretched to its breaking point. He was a testament to endurance, a symbol of unwavering loyalty, and now, a desperate plea for salvation in the heart of a merciless winter. The empty home had forged him, the wilderness had tested him, and now the final gamble for his life was upon him. He closed his eyes, his will to live burning fiercely even as his body threatened to give out. This was his last chance, his final desperate cry for help. The large truck rumbled closer, its tires crunching on the frozen gravel of the driveway. Max lay in the snow, his body trembling, every nerve screaming in exhaustion, but his eyes were fixed on the approaching vehicle. He had given his last ounce of strength, and now all he could do was wait. The truck slowed as it neared the house, its brakes hissing softly. Max watched, his heart a frantic drum against his ribs as it pulled to a stop. Two figures emerged from the cab, bundled in heavy winter gear. They were the same strangers who had been clearing out the house weeks ago. Max whimpered, a soft, almost inaudible sound. He was so close, yet so vulnerable. One of the figures, a burly man with a thick beard, glanced towards the shed, his eyes casually sweeping over the landscape. His gaze paused, then returned, a flicker of something new in his expression, confusion, then perhaps recognition. He saw Max. Max watched, holding his breath, as the man nudged his companion and pointed. The second person, a woman with a kind face framed by a woolen hat, followed his gaze. Her eyes widened slightly, a gasp escaping her lips. They saw him. Max tried to bark again, but only a weak, rasping sound emerged. He couldn't move, couldn't even lift his head properly. He lay there, a pathetic, emaciated golden shadow against the pristine, white snow, his only hope resting on the compassion of these strangers. The man and woman exchanged a few hurried words, their voices muffled by the distance and the wind. Then the woman started to move, slowly at first, then with increasing urgency towards Max. She called out, her voice soft but clear. "Oh, you poor thing. What are you doing out here?" Max lifted his head slightly, his tail giving the faintest, most fragile thump against the snow. It was a human voice, a kind voice, directed at him. A surge of relief, so profound it almost brought tears to his weary eyes, washed over him. He had been seen. He was no longer invisible. The woman knelt beside him, her gloved hand reaching out slowly, cautiously. Max's instincts screamed caution, but the overwhelming need for connection, for warmth, for an end to his suffering, silenced his fear. He let out a soft whine, a plea, a confession of his desperate fight. The man joined her, his face now etched with concern. "He's just skin and bones," he murmured, his voice gruff but gentle. "Must have been in here the whole time." The woman's hand, warm even through her glove, gently stroked Max's head. It was the first touch of kindness he had felt in months, a sensation so overwhelming it made him tremble. He leaned into her touch, trying to convey all the suffering, all the loneliness, all the desperate struggle he had endured within the empty home and the brutal winter outside. He was found. The long, solitary fight was finally, miraculously, coming to an end. A fragile glimmer of hope, brighter than any sunbeam, pierced through the icy despair that had enveloped him for so long. He was no longer just enduring. He was saved. The woman's voice was a soft melody in the harsh winter air, a sound Max hadn't heard directed at him in what felt like an eternity. She knelt beside him, her movements slow and gentle, her gloved hand reaching out tentatively. Max flinched, a primal instinct to protect himself, but the softness in her eyes, the gentle cadence of her voice, broke through his fear. He felt a warm hand gently stroke his head, then moved down his emaciated body, checking for injuries. He whined, a sound of profound relief, pressing his head into her hand, trying to convey months of loneliness, of hunger, of cold, of the desperate fight to endure. The man, less hesitant, joined her, his expression softening as he took in Max's skeletal frame. "He's barely alive," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "We need to get him somewhere warm, get him some food." The woman, whose name Max would later learn was Eleanor, carefully scooped him into her arms. Despite his size, he felt impossibly light, a testament to his severe weight loss. The warmth of her body, even through her thick winter coat, was a revelation, a comfort so profound it brought tears to Max's eyes, or perhaps it was just the sting of the cold, he couldn't tell. He was gently placed in the back seat of the truck, nestled amongst soft blankets and an old coat. The door closed, shutting out the biting wind, and the interior of the truck filled with the blessed, intoxicating scent of warmth and humanity. He curled up, his body slowly relaxing for the first time in months, the soft rumble of the engine a comforting lullaby. Eleanor sat beside him, gently stroking his fur, murmuring soft, reassuring words. She offered him a small piece of bread from her lunch, which he devoured ravenously, barely tasting it in his desperate hunger. It was the first real food he had eaten in what felt like an eternity, a promise of more to come. The truck pulled away from the empty home, leaving behind the decaying mansion and the desolate garden. Max watched it recede in the rearview mirror, a symbol of his past struggle, his long fight to endure. But his gaze quickly turned forward, towards the warmth, the gentle touch, the promise of a future. The journey was slow, careful. They drove to a local veterinary clinic where Max was immediately attended to. He was weak, dehydrated, and severely malnourished, but the veterinarian confirmed that his spirit was strong, his will to live a miracle. He was given intravenous fluids, soft, nourishing food, and a warm, comfortable bed. The sensation of a full stomach, of a soft bed, of continuous warmth, was almost overwhelming. Max slept for what felt like days, a deep, restorative sleep free from the constant gnawing of hunger or the biting cold. When he awoke, Eleanor was there, her kind face smiling down at him. She spent hours with him, talking softly, gently brushing his matted fur, her touch a balm to his battered spirit. Max, in turn, showered her with gentle licks and grateful nudges, his tail, finally, giving a slow, steady wag. He was not just rescued, he was found, he was loved. The empty home was behind him, a distant memory of struggle and solitude. Ahead lay the promise of a new home, a new life, filled with warmth, food, and, most importantly, the unwavering companionship of a loving human. His fight to endure was over, replaced by the profound peace of knowing he was finally truly home. Max, the golden retriever, had not just survived. He had triumphed, a living testament to the unbreakable spirit of loyalty, resilience, and the enduring power of hope.